Hey everybody, welcome in and thanks for joining me once again on This Week Ahead. I remember it well. I was lying in my bed, sick as can be, when I received an email from our Ward County emergency manager. The headline of the email was Confirmed COVID-19 Case. It was March 11, 2020, when we identified the first confirmed case of COVID-19 in North Dakota. It was right here in Minot. Sick with flu-like symptoms, I immediately wondered if I was in the same boat. I didn't get tested. I just waited until I was 100% symptom-free. It was a year ago. It was before we knew what we know now, to isolate, to stay home, to get tested. March 11, 2020 was the start of a whole new life for all of us. 4 days later, a year ago tomorrow, in fact, Governor Doug Burgum made a historic announcement on a Sunday night, closing schools statewide.
We are by executive order ordering the closing of K-12 schools, both public and non-public, through Friday, March 20th. We will revisit this at the end of the week based on better data and better plans at that point in time to decide where we go next.
It was 1 year ago, terms like testing and tracing, remote working, distance learning, quarantining, they all entered our vocabulary on the regular. What a difference a year makes, huh? This week ahead, as we're recognizing the progress against the pandemic that we've made, most of us have the opportunity to ensure any of those measures we took last March certainly will not be needed again. First District Health Unit is accepting appointments for COVID-19 vaccinations for anyone, quote, with a pulse and a paycheck. This is effectively opening up vaccinations to the healthy public 18 and older. Whether you're part-time, full-time, or a contract employee, the state of North Dakota is recognizing you as essential. This is monumental, guys. Community health professionals took to the airwaves last week to make the case for you to get the vaccine.
I mean, the end is in sight. It is so close we can touch it.
We should get vaccinated. Even if you think you've been infected before, or even if you know that you have been infected before. We do not know how much protection that the natural antibodies or the natural immunity that you get from the infection confers on you.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that means a lot right now. So my goal is to get as many taking their shots as they possibly can right now. I highly recommend it to young folks who think that, hey, I might not be in that risk category. But the other thing I want to point out is that you're doing it for your team.
It's been a heck of a war this past year is how I look at it. And I remember not many months ago, it felt like we were losing that battle. And the time when our hospital had an entire floor dedicated to COVID patients, a good portion of another floor dedicated to COVID patients, and an ICU that was essentially full of COVID patients with a significant percentage on ventilators. We're at the point that we are cautious, observing, but optimistic at this point, because we have tools come into place that is starting to allow us to win the war.
TLDR, vaccines are the best bet to having to think or even debate the idea of a mask mandate for this virus. Wide adoption of inoculation is our best and most proven tool to get life back to normal, to give security back to our businesses, to alleviate the anxiety of those that are immunocompromised, to turn our clocks back to 1 year ago. On the 1 year anniversary of that email informing me of the first ever COVID-19 case in North Dakota, I received my first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Now, I know there are myths and incorrect information out there about these 3 available vaccines.
So getting a vaccine, the risk is tiny when you look at statistics in general. We see patients almost daily in our clinics that are months out from having coronavirus. that have long-standing issues around that disease. We have seen patients in their 20s with cardiomyopathies, which will affect them the rest of their life. The risk of the disease is so great compared to the risk of not getting the disease. Even asymptomatic patients have been shown to have some of those lifelong, life-changing issues. So getting that vaccine is important. We encourage everybody. And there's the notion also out there is, well, I had the disease, or I had an antibody test, and I found out I had antibodies, so I don't need the vaccine. That's false. It's recommended by the CDC, even if you had the disease, that you get vaccinated. We have had multiple instances within the state of North Dakota where people have now had coronavirus twice. So getting that vaccine is important, and the antibody test really is meaningless in my view, because you should still get vaccinated. That's everybody's choice, but we want people to be informed. If you have hesitancies, I would encourage you to call the health professional that you see on a regular basis that knows you and that you trust, and talk through that with them.
But the fact is, if you're sick of the pandemic, you're not alone. But we have the tools to get out of it. The next year is now in our hands. We've heard many stats in the last 365 days. 1,700,000 COVID-19 tests have been taken. 100,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the state. And sadly, over 1,400 deaths have been recorded. But there's just one stat that matters now, a year later after it all began. 70. Our new normal starts at 70% inoculation. The final chapter of COVID-19 is now. It's up to us on how long that chapter lasts. All right, this week ahead will be our second council meeting for the month of March. This time around, we have a bit more action to it. I want to focus on one specific action that the city council will take up on Monday. It's something that doesn't happen often, and one that has taken years to get to this point. We're revising our zoning ordinance for the city of Minot. The new ordinance passed the Planning Commission and will now arrive at the desk for City Council to review and approve. Ordinances are changed all the time. The annual budget, for example, is an ordinance itself. While it is a beast, one I hope to discuss on future episodes with you, the zoning ordinance changes will address a wide variety of changes, from signage to landscape requirements and everything in between. The whole works. It took 2 years and a ton of meetings from a steering committee comprised of city staff, city aldermen, and members from the public. For local government, it's all about process. The process that we take, in most cases, is more important than the results that actually happen after. And this process is a prime example. Because without all the members, this improvement to the city's zoning laws may not be as comprehensive as it is. But to fully understand how comprehensive that the new zoning ordinance will be as it goes in front of council this week, I'll need some help. Okay, I want to bring in the man that is leading the charge right now on our new zoning ordinances. Community Development Director, that's Brian Billingsley. Brian, good morning. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you very much. Now, Brian, we got a lot to get to because this is a whole beast that you've been working on for essentially months, really, since you started here. The zoning ordinances, Brian, the changes that you're bringing to council on Monday, it took, I don't know, like 2 years or so, hundreds of hours of work. Let's start with the changes that are being proposed. What should we know about these new zoning laws?
Okay, Derek, if you use our ordinance on a daily or weekly basis, you should know that many of our land uses are changing in terms of what kind of uses are permitted in each zoning district. We've updated our sign code. We've updated our parking regulations. We've updated our wireless facilities ordinance for cell phone towers. We've updated all of our procedures. Many of our definitions have been updated. And we also have updated our development standards as well. The areas we haven't changed so much are the landscaping ordinance that was updated back in 2018. Most of our building setback and building height requirements have not changed. Also, our non-conforming uses section is staying the same. Our penalties are staying the same. And our subdivision ordinance, we didn't have time to start work on the subdivision ordinance. So as soon as the zoning ordinance is adopted, we're going to start working on the subdivision ordinance. Our goal is to have that adopted this fall.
So I mentioned the process. In local government, the process is as important, if not more important, than the end result in a lot of respects. What was the process like for making such, dare I say, sweeping changes, Brian?
So the first process was we had a budget for this project. A project of this magnitude requires funding. It requires a consultant and requires time. And so the first thing we had to do was amend the city budget to appropriate the funds for this project. The second thing that was done was we hired a consultant through an RFP process. We hired a consultant based out of Bismarck. They've done several zoning ordinances throughout the state, and they did a great job for us. And then the third thing you need to do is formulate a team or a committee of city residents and industry leaders and have them go over those proposed changes and have them provide their input and their feedback and incorporate their recommendations into the ordinance. And then finally is to have public participation. We opened the ordinance up for public comment. We put the ordinance on our website. We invited the public to provide comments through our portal system. And we reviewed those comments, proposed them to the committee. We made some changes to the ordinance right before we took it to the Planning Commission on March 2nd.
So you mentioned that you had to assemble sort of a committee, a team. This isn't just city staff that's trying to do this stuff. This is a holistic view from the community, mostly the people that are impacted by these changes. Who was all a part of this process?
We had a surveyor on the committee. The co-chairman, Raleigh Ackerman, was on the committee along with Rustin Rodelick, who is a former city engineer. He now works as an engineer in the private sector. Gloria Larsgaard is a local architect who serves on the committee. Minot Area Builders has a representative on the committee. They've had a couple of people serve during the last 2 years on the committee. We have a person from the finance industry, Tyler Neeler. He used to be the Planning Commission chairman a couple of years ago for the city of Minot. He also serves on the committee, and we have a representative from our Planning Commission, Tim Bauman. He has served the last 2 years representing our Planning Commission. And lastly, we have a liaison from the City Council. Josh Wolski and Tom Ross have served in that capacity over the past 2 years.
Why such a wide variety of people, Brian?
It's good to have input from all sectors of the development process, whether they're builders or designers or people who provide other services in the development industry, or the people who are actually impacted directly by the codes that people are building our projects. So it's good to have a wide representation on the committee, have that input and have them involved up front. So that way we as staff, that we're aware of the issues that they've had in the past with dealing with our current codes and our past codes. And hopefully we can make our codes better. That's the ultimate goal, is to improve upon what we already have.
Okay, Brian. So that I think you're alluding to this a little bit, but it really begs the question. Why? Why would we even need to make all these little tweaks and changes on a holistic? Why can't we just go little by little as we go? Why do we need to go through this whole process to update our zoning rules?
I think it's healthy for communities to update their codes every 8 to 10 years, do a complete update. It's also healthy, I think, to do them annually, to do small updates and make minor modifications. But you have to understand, Derek, that there's always new and emerging industries that are coming up. 30 years ago, we didn't have cell phone towers. We didn't have tiny homes. We didn't have wind energy systems or solar farms or medical marijuana facilities. These industries are always popping up, and we need to be prepared for them and be able to regulate them. There's always going to be state or federal government mandates that come down upon us that we're going to have to amend our ordinances to be consistent with. And then lastly, there's always court cases that come up as well. A good example is a Supreme Court case from about 6 years ago that pretty much rendered almost every zoning ordinance in the country unconstitutional. Basically, cities now have to be content neutral with how that they regulate sign codes. We can't regulate them to say, you know, a political sign can be this big, a religious sign has to be this size, and so on. We have to treat everybody the same rather than basically regulate the sign by how it reads. So I think those are the three good reasons why we have to update our codes on a semi-regular basis, just to keep current with industry standards and to make sure that we're following state and federal laws.
So that really makes the ordinance that's going in front of council on Monday night more like a sort of a living, breathing document. So this isn't the last time changes will be made. How do you plan on sort of maintaining and adjusting these as we need in the future then, Brian?
What we're going to do is we're going to keep our zoning ordinance steering committee active. We're going to probably reconvene the meetings in the fall, and we're going to analyze how well our codes are doing every year. And then we'll probably come up with some proposed changes throughout the winter months, and then take them to the planning commission and the city council for adoption before the construction season begins every year.
If this is such a process and something that you need to manage annually now, why do we even need zoning laws at all, Brian? What is sort of the history and the relevance of these rules?
Well, the whole point of zoning is the protection of public health, safety, and welfare. You know, before zoning was created back in the 1920s, basically it was anything goes, and you found a lot of disasters happening back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. You know, like the Great Chicago Fire is a good example, where pretty much all of the city burned down because of the lack of building setbacks, the materials that were used. We basically learned our lesson from those disasters and incorporated those lessons into what we call zoning codes that have been around now for about 100 years. And they're only getting better with time, and they're not perfect. But as the more that we learn about our profession, the better we get with time. And I fully expect that, you know, 8 to 10 years from now, we'll be back here again with an even better set of codes.
So the zoning rules aren't perfect, but we're certainly trying, and that's what this process was all about.
That is correct.
Okay, now I want you to pull out your crystal ball for me, Brian. The council adopts the changes on Monday, let's just say. Now what? What happens next?
The first thing we're going to have to do is update our website, put the new codes on our website. Actually, this requires 2 readings, Derek. So technically, it'll have to go back to the council for the April 5th meeting. But on April 6th, the first thing we'll do is we're going to update our website, put the new codes out there. We're going to distribute the new codes to all of our customers, all the engineering firms and architectural firms throughout the region. And then we're going to start training our staff and start training our customers on the changes that were made. And, you know, if anybody has questions on the ordinance, they're welcome to call us, or they can visit us at the Home and Garden Show next weekend. We're going to have a booth there, and we'll have the ordinance available. So if anybody has any questions on the ordinance, you're welcome to stop by our booth at the Home and Garden Show and ask my staff.
Hey, you getting commission on us here? Are you plugging that Home and Garden Show? You're getting a little kickback? Is that what's happening?
No.
No, just go out and visit our community development team next weekend. Brian, did we miss anything this morning?
No, that's about it. The only thing I want to do is I want to thank all the committee members for volunteering their time. They've, like you stated earlier, they spent hundreds of hours on this project. We had 38 meetings over 2 years. And before each meeting, they read all the proposed changes. They came to the meetings prepared. They made some great suggestions. They were very helpful. This wasn't a project where we just hired a consultant. We rubber stamped what they did. There was a lot of review of what they had prepared, what staff had prepared as well. I thought our committee did a great job. I want to thank them and acknowledge them for the work that they've done. And I also want to thank the general public too, for those from the public who provided comments to us back in December and January as well. And anybody who participated in our meetings were posted for the general public to appear. We did have people attend and ask questions or provide comments and feedback, and I'd like to thank them as well.
All right, Brian, thank you so much. That's Brian Billingsley, our Community Development Director, the man that inherited a large project the moment he walked in the door, and it's just one of many things we will see from community development in the coming weeks. That's called a tease, everyone. Brian, I think you'll be joining me again very soon.
I hope so. Thank you, Derek.
Thanks, Brian. Hey, this week ahead marks an interesting day for any of you that are looking to get outside and enjoy some of the seasonal weather that we have. The City of Minot's 10 yard waste collection sites are now open for the season. The city's yard waste collection sites for City of Minot garbage collection patrons only, and they're not to be used by non-residents or by commercial haulers. Yard wastes include things like grass clippings, garden waste, leaves, vines, flowers, flower bed clippings, and apples, for example, all falling from trees. Tree branches are not permitted to be put in the yard waste collection containers, and small piles of tree branches, if you do have those, are picked up separately throughout the week, as time permits, of course. Residents with city sanitation service should put small piles of tree branches near collection points, right by your bin, so to speak, on your regular day of collection. And then our city crews will just add that address to a nice little list of trees, and they'll go pick those up when they can. So take advantage of our compost sites if you're looking to do a little pre-spring cleaning. Okay, I've asked and you have delivered. I want to take a minute to answer 2 questions from our mailbag. The first is a specific question that I want to answer broadly because it's one that we do get often. This one comes from a Mr. John Stewart. He asks, quote, why are there no left turn arrows off of 11th Avenue Southwest on to Broadway? He's referring to the intersection by the Scandinavian Heritage Park. It's a great question and one that comes up for several intersections across the city. So here's the thing. The answer is twofold. First, the City of Minot is in the process of analyzing left turn signal operations for every signaled intersection in the city. And we will look to make changes where needed. Okay, so second, a comprehensive Broadway corridor study is underway that will identify necessary improvements along the entire stretch of Broadway, which we expect will include left turn signals changes. It's not an issue that we can solve overnight, although we want to, but the work is underway to create more safe and efficient intersections throughout our entire community. So, long answer short, we're looking into it and we're working on it as fast as we can. Thanks for the question, John. Stay tuned. The next isn't a direct question to us, but it was submitted to the Minot Daily as a letter to the editor. It's about manholes, specifically in the spring, and more specifically, the ones that rock the boat a little bit. You know, you might have had the unwelcome experience of driving over a manhole that seemed to have sunk into the road, perhaps creating that unexpected jolt on your vehicle. Well, you can thank Mother Nature for this one. But even though it might look like it, the manhole is not sinking itself. If it did, that would cause even bigger headaches for us. Instead, because of our notorious freeze and thaw cycles, especially a year like this, frost causes asphalt and the layers underneath it to sort of heave upwards, which creates a void around the manhole itself. As temporary fixes, we do have city crews out there using little rubber spacers to raise that manhole cover to eliminate that jolting void, or sort of fill the space by putting sand or gravel on top of the manhole cover. For, more permanent repair, we will have crews remove the asphalt around the manhole. They'll install spacers underneath the casing if necessary, and then put it back together, including smooth and level asphalt around that manhole cover. With our weather, though, this is an ongoing battle every spring for our street crews. So this is a chance. If you do notice a manhole with this type of problem, and we know they're out there, we do have a running list, but if you think it's not on that list, give us a call at the Water Sewer Department, 857-4150. Now, thanks for joining me on This Week Ahead. If you have any other questions like the 2 that we did today, please send them our way. We'll take them via email. You can email them at info@minotnd.org. Use the subject title of mailbag, or you can just go to our website, www.minotnd.org/mailbag. And of course, if you like this kind of information, you can find it throughout your week on social media. Make sure you follow us at City of Minot on all of your favorite social media pages. We're there. We're trying to be as active as we can. And if you like this kind of nuanced information beyond what I do here, you can sign up for our newsletter. It goes out twice a month. It's called The Latest. You can do that by signing up at minotnd.org/The the latest. And if you're listening to our audio version, our podcast of this, I ask you to not only tell a friend, forward it to a couple friends, download, but also rate our podcast app as well. That will help us circulate this information so other people can be a little bit more in the know of what we're doing here at the City of Minot. Thanks for joining me and enjoy your week ahead.